that. And so, oh, I'm ready. So, but anyway, they handed me a mic instead of these because they'd already given the speakers in front of me one of these. Marjorie. Mm-hmm. And so I was afraid because I talk with my hands. Okay, great. Well, you guys, as you know, my name's Marjorie, and I have been in the fire safety business for over 20 years. And I am an inspector for the federal and state government for fire safety in homes, daycares, and businesses. And I am also a firefighter. Now, I do all of that part-time now because I do enjoy teaching fire safety, what I'm going to teach you today. We're Rocky Mountain Family Fire. We are located in Clearfield, but as I mentioned, we're worldwide with people that do the same thing I do. So if you have people in other countries or, even in the United States, let us know and we could maybe help them out. Well, let's start with this right here. Let's talk about, we've already talked about a few things, but let's talk about fire safety in your home. One of the first things that people think about, in fact, they don't think about, is fire safety, okay? It's the last thing. When you guys come home from work, is it the first thing you think about fire? No? And when you go to bed, is it the first thing you think about or the last thing you think about? No. You don't say, hey, let's go study fire safety right now. It's like, no, we got to get dinner on. We got to get all these things. So it does become out of sight, out of mind. Not because you don't care, it's because we are busy, aren't we? And so we've got to prepare for these things, and I congratulate your congregation and your church for doing this, because it is something that people put off because we are so busy. Isn't that sad? We're so busy sometimes that we don't prepare. So starting with that, let's talk about something. Let's say you're having a kitchen fire. How would you put it out? An extinguisher in your pantry. Awesome. Now, Ross, do you know how to use it? Number one. You better look at the instructions. Now, I want you to imagine this during a fire. I'm going to grab a prop here. You're having a fire, okay? This is hanging on the wall, but if you've never practiced, never really looked at it, didn't have the training like Judy did, it's not the first thing on your mind, right? Fantastic. And the one you have is different? Okay, so maybe knowing how. Maybe it's one of the push button ones that puts foam out. And so knowing what you have is very important in how to use it. Because I'll tell you honestly, there's tons of people that have these hanging in their house. They go to grab them, they're not good. Now, how do you know if they're good, right? So let's kind of start with that right now. First of all, you've got to look at the gauge. Now, if you guys can see, and you can come up and look later, but this one is not in the green. It is supposed to be in the green to be good. That means it's pressurized. Okay, now knowing what type of extinguisher you have, meaning metal, aluminum, plastic, is very important on whether or not it can be refilled, Ty. Okay, we were talking about that. How do you know? Look at the bottom. Do you see how this is a cylinder with a welded in cap? It's not been formed or pressed in. That's if it's plastic or aluminum, it will be flat or pressed in or concave, not like this. Having it all metal means that it can be refilled. It's a commercial grade, it's heavier, and this can be refilled. These will last you 16 years. And like we mentioned, Ty, they can be refilled. And with them being refilled, guess what? It's a lot cheaper than buying a whole new one. Now, the other way you can tell is put your hand flat. Stick your extinguisher in the middle. Now, do not try to balance it. Let go. If it tips one direction or the other, it's solidified in the bottom. Every 6 months, you should take your extinguisher and tip it upside down. Take a rubber mallet. Hit it, not your hand, a rubber mallet. Bang, 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 bang. That keeps everything free-flowing because it's pressurized. That chemical doesn't let it cake on the bottom. And so with that, I'm going to kind of pass this around. I'm going to let you just turn it. Don't do it fast, just do it slow, and you'll feel it go thunk. That means the chemical is not pressurized, okay? So go ahead and pass that around and look at the gauge. Now, they do come in different sizes. Did you have a question, Judy? Yes, anyone that's ABC. Now, ABC is the one that you should have for general use in your home, okay? Now, if you want a specialty one, the ones you should be careful of, and they're great, but you need to be careful of them. Everybody's like, oh, this is such a cute extinguisher. I want one of these. But if you don't know how to use the chemical inside, you wouldn't. This is called halotron. Now, if any of you guys do mechanic work, if you are on computers, things like that, this literally pulls the oxygen out of the air. What does fire need? Heat, fuel, and oxygen. And if you take the oxygen away, it's a clean agent. So if you spray that, that's a powder, isn't it? The one I passed around. It cakes up a motor. It will kill your internet, your computer, anything that is a computer, right? It also, this one is a clean agent, so when you spray it, it is a liquid at first, and it adheres to the smoke, so it looks like a smoky thing. But guess what? If you breathe it in, Gary, it takes the oxygen away from you. So that's the one I say, be careful. If you have not been trained, can we harm ourselves if we don't know how to use different ones? So the one you guys want to get is called an ABC. It does everything from garbage, wallboard, plastics, woods, anything in your home. One right there. So if you look on the bottom, you'll see it says ABC. On this one, it will say halotron. Do you see where it is right there? All right, so knowing the kind that you get, and what kind do you guys, what are we going to get for general use if we don't have a lot of experience? What? ABC. It's just like the alphabet, isn't it? Right, Judy? What's the kind that we want to get for extinguishers? ABC, right? That's not too bad, is it? Okay, now the next thing that I'm going to show you is something that's recommended by the fire industry for putting out fires, and this is a fire blanket. How many of you guys know what a fire blanket is? Okay, These are pretty exciting. They're 36 by 36. Now I'm going to show you how to use them first, and then I'm just going to show you the way it works because it's pretty impressive instead of talking about it. Now I have this one folded up so you can see very easily, okay? And this is pretty amazing. You're having a kitchen fire, you should grab an extinguisher. Do you know how many people won't grab an extinguisher? They use a lid or something like that. You hold this in front of you and you, now how many of you guys heard the whoosh? That took the oxygen right out. You throw it over the fire. How many of you guys think you can do that? Hold it in front of you, drop it on the fire. How many think they can do that? Yeah. And it hangs in a bag like this. You just grab it right like that and do what? It's out, right? You do? Cool. You use these straps to hold it in front of you and you throw it over the fire. How many of you, all of you think you could do that? Pretty easy. Let's think of some other uses. What else could you use this fire blanket for? Exactly. Franz, you can put it around somebody and put out the fire if they're on fire. What about you getting out of a fire, using it as a shield or wrapping it around you or your kids or your pets? How many different uses can you think of for a fire blanket? A lot? Do you know how, go ahead. Did you have a question or you just think you can think of a lot of uses?
No, you can use both sides, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And you can use it again until you burn through it. I'm not saying how many, oh, moving too much. How many little fires do we have on the stove or something else that we could use it on near sudden heart-pounding moments, right? Now, what are some other things you could use if you didn't have a fire blanket? Go ahead, shout some out. A towel to smother and cover, definitely. Anything else? No water. And I have a lot of people think, oh, right in the kitchen we have that sprayer thing, right? So we could put it out with that. Now, what is the problem with using water? You what? Oxygen, true. H2O, exactly. But the big thing is, too, is you guys have heard if you have grease and you hit it and it's hot with water, what can happen, Judy? It will splash and make it bigger, right? But what most people don't know, they know that part about the grease and stuff being hot, but they don't know that 90% of fires are electrical. And if you hit water with electricity, Gary, what's going to happen? Right, it's a shocking experience. No, it is. It is. You'll get electrocuted. So they say no matter where it is, kitchen or not, don't use water, right? Because we don't want it to be that shocking experience for you. Okay, how many of you guys thought that was pretty neat about the fire blanket? It is. And you know that kids and us can use that more often because we talked about, is that the first thing we think about with the extinguisher? Mm-mm. But guess what? With a fire blanket, you're like, yeah, I can do that. Grab it, throw it on. Even kids can do that. Before you go get mommy and daddy, throw it on the fire, go get us. Wrap it around you to get out of a fire. Pretty awesome, isn't it? And so if you haven't had one, and they're not all created equal, make sure that they're made out of fiberglass. This one is fiberglass with a silicone overlay, okay? And you're welcome to, we'll pass that around too.
Are there different ones?
There are. Some of them, we carry them all the time. I know there's a lot of knockoffs on Amazon, and you'll get them and they'll be really thin. So just, you get what you kind of pay for, but making sure it's fiberglass, not the wool and cotton. What's wrong with wool and cotton? It can burn. And it's better than nothing, right? But having it be the fiberglass, it doesn't let it breathe. And then the silicone, you know how they even cook in silicone pans now? Very resistant to heat.
So this one is good for how much of temperature?
It's not really the temperature because anything can burn through because if there's an accelerant underneath, it can eventually, but it will stop the oxygen, maybe enough to put it out, or enough for you to turn off the stove, or enough for you to get away or to get out. Never put it over you to sit on, wait for the fire to go over you. This is for escape, all right? How many of you guys think you learned a little bit with that right now? A little bit? About the fire blanket? Cool. You had a question, Ross?
Yeah, so if you're, like, say, if you've got a big pot,
It will, because the fire will kill, eat the oxygen that's inside it, and then it can't draw more oxygen once that's on top, can it? So if you have the lid for the pot, always better, isn't it? Because that just totally seals it. But if you don't have the lid, because I have a lot of pots I don't have the lid for, grabbing that fire blanket, you don't even have to unfold it. You can just plop it over it and cover it. Isn't that nice? So yeah, food for thought. You can use it in any application, and you don't have to totally unfold it to use it, okay, unless it's a bigger situation. And having them in your room, a lot of people don't think about where to put these. Now, where are the top 2 places to put a fire extinguisher or a fire blanket? Kitchen, definitely, Gary, because that's where a lot of fires happen from cooking, and we have how many appliances there? Where's the second? Garage is good, but actually, Ross, the second one will shock you guys. It's your bedroom. You're like, what? For escape. When do most fatal fires happen? When you're asleep. Why are they when we're asleep? We're unaware. Can you see, smell, and hear the same way when you're asleep as you do right now? And every breath, once a fire starts, you breathe in toxins that make you go deeper and deeper into sleep. And if you're in a coma, it doesn't matter if an alarm goes off, you're not going to wake up. And with all the synthetics we have in our homes now, it burns quite differently, okay? And we're going to talk a lot about those synthetics. So having this in your bedroom ensures that you make it out the door, because if there's a fire, you can knock it down and keep going. If the fire is bigger than 3 feet by 3 feet, think of your stovetop or something about that size, you're going to only be able to knock it down. It's going to re-flash tie. So don't hesitate. Knock it down, go over it, get out. So if it's bigger than that, don't sit there and fight it. Get out, get the fire department there. You're going to need their help. Now, who knows how many, and number 3 is the garage. So Ross, you were right there, but isn't it shocking that number 2 is your bedroom? Would you have ever thought that? It's not. Now, the nice thing is, we get to control where those go, and once we train ourselves, once you've made the decision, you know what? That's 99% of the battle. Once you've already gone through it in your mind and you know what to do, if you have a ladder for your windows, I was going to bring a ladder, but we didn't have any way to practice it. If you have a second story, why should you get that ladder out of the box and practice before you ever have a fire? Open your window, climb out the window, and climb down the ladder. Why should you do that? It is. It's going to be a little bit wobbly, isn't it? And so then, Lena, are you going to be a little bit nervous and I have your name right, is it Lena? Okay, you're going to be wobbly like this, and your heart's already pounding. You're nervous, you're scared, you might be carrying a child. Would that be kind of hard to go down when your heart's pounding and a fire's coming towards you? Now, let's say it's just a Saturday afternoon and you're making the neighbors talk. You're having fun, you're going to handle the swaying, aren't you, a little better. And if you do it at least 1 or 2 times, you're more comfortable with it than when you actually have an emergency. And so any of your emergency things you should practice with, just so you have that comfort of knowing how to use it. Just like how I just threw it over a fire, even fake throw it over a fire, you feel better prepared, okay? Now let's think of some other things too. What about when we're out and about? An emergency preparedness kit. I know this isn't exactly fire, but they're always nice to have because fire, anything requires things like this. And half the people that have these have huge ones. They're go bags, they're EMT bags, and those are great, but let's be honest. How many of you have taken them out of your vehicle? You needed the room. A lot of people, we ask them, they're like, oh, it's in the garage. That doesn't do you any good when you're out and about. And so I love the smaller ones. I love the big ones, but I love the smaller ones because they never get taken out of your vehicle, out of your motorcycle. It fits in the saddlebags. If you're like me, I live in the country. Our horses, our saddlebags, our tractors, four-wheelers, anything can have these in them, and they don't take lots of room, do they? Now, what's inside here is a flashlight, radio, ponchos, blankets, over 180 different pieces. So knowing what type to have is important. They're individually pouched so that if you're on a boat, it's waterproof. If you run into a rainstorm, if you do anything like that, all of your medical supplies, and they're sanitary. Does that make sense? You're not opening up tons of them. This one's one of my favorite because this has some things that you'll need if you run off the road. Now, let's say you ran off the road, Judy. You're not planning on that, are you? I never plan on it, but it could happen. And again, like I said, I live up in Hennifer, which is on the other side. I'm on the Wasatch back, you're on the Wasatch front, right? And so with that, we might not have cell phone service. If my car's totally dead, let's say it's raining or snowing, I didn't bring my jacket, guess what else it has? It has a poncho in there, okay? What if my kids or grandkids are in there? I have a blanket to keep them warm because the car's not running, right? I can put on the poncho, go walk and get phone service, get help coming. Now, these aren't industrial strengths, but guess what? It's listed on the front. You can go ahead and get another one and put on there, or you can scan the QR code to just get this packet. And so knowing what you have in your emergency kit, knowing what you can add, this has all sorts of Band-Aids, and they're all in one pack, and it tells you what's in there, right? I love the medications because my husband, his high blood pressure medicine and stuff, he couldn't go 24 hours without. I have one in here, and I wrote with a Sharpie. And so in every one of them, in our tractors and everything, there's one of those. And I put a bottle of water and some granola bars. Why do you think that's important to have? You might need it. So I know that wasn't exactly fire safety, but we do promote emergency in your cars as well. Same with the extinguisher. If somebody has a fire, how many car fires have you seen? Now, do you open up the hood to put out an engine fire? Nope, but how many people do? They pop the hood. Why? What did you give it when you popped the hood? More oxygen. Spray through the grill. Okay? Spray through the grill till you get it pretty much contained, then you won't have the big whoosh. Does that make sense? So hopefully you learned a couple of good things. Another thing for fire safety, a lot of people don't know what this is for. Who knows what this is for? It is. It's a window breaker. And a lot of people learned about this for their cars, didn't they? And this is a seatbelt cutter. That's what they think. Do you know why they're in here? Whenever you buy them for your car or anything, they actually were first invented for homes. The first thing that happens is the oxygen gets pulled out of your home. Your windows actually do what? Because we make our homes more energy efficient, the windows start to bow in because you have a limited amount of oxygen. If you go to punch that window tie, it's stronger because it's bowed in. You can literally break your hand. It's kind of like you know how our shatterproof glass in our windshield, you can't really punch it, can you? You'd break your hand. That little point right there will do the same thing. Much better than you punching or throwing something through a window. Have something. These are very inexpensive, like $5. You can get more expensive ones. But having those in there, and they can hang right in your window, that's what that's for, is to hang in the window sill. So you always have stuff ready. Pull it, break it. Now this will cut the screen. It'll also cut like sheets or anything if you don't have a ladder to help you climb down. Pretty interesting little tool, isn't it? How many of you ever knew about these before and that they were actually first for fire before the car? Did any of you guys know that? No. Pretty crazy, yeah. Now, another thing that I like to talk to people about is what we do in our home. Now, I don't know if you can play that first video for us. Now, I want you guys to watch this. This is, it's got some news things in it too. But you really don't think about the things you throw in your drawer, do you? So let's see if you can cue up that video. If you can't, that's okay. We'll go without it. Okay. It's for the steel wool.
We all have junk drawers, odds and ends thrown in, but did you know what's in there could actually start a fire?
Tonight, 5 on Your Side consumer advocate Jonathan Walsh has the bottom line on the potential dangers of 9-volt batteries and what you need to know before the flames start.
By themselves, stuff in your junk drawer or maybe a random box, pretty harmless. But you get the right combination and you can create something like this.
I have a fire.
I couldn't believe it.
I need the fire department here.
Inside your house?
It's real. Batteries are dangerous.
Yes, inside my house.
David Miller's home in Fort Collins, Colorado, caught fire after, of all things, he changed the 9-volt batteries out of his smoke detectors and put the old ones in a paper bag to be recycled.
The morning of the fire, I had moved the bag around, and that's apparently what caused the batteries to get into the right position to short against each other.
David's house is not alone. We uncovered this 9-volt battery hazard alert from the New Hampshire State Fire Marshal after flames broke out in a kitchen junk drawer in that state. We investigated these kinds of fires with the Broadview Heights Fire Department and the Northeastern Ohio Fire Prevention Association. I was there as Assistant Chief Joe Fleming showed how a coin can go from 74 degrees to more than 150 within minutes of touching the terminals on a 9-volt battery.
The thinner the metal, the more tendency it's going to have to heat up even to a higher temperature.
We then put together our own junk drawer with keys, a coffee filter, steel wool for washing pots and pans, and more. On our third try of closing the drawer with a 9-volt battery inside, notice how the battery slides and makes contact with the steel wool. Now, normally there would be a counter on top of this drawer in a typical kitchen, so the open air on this demonstration and breezes have an effect on how quickly the fire starts. But just like those fires in Colorado and New Hampshire, the flames get going.
You go to bed and that thing could be smoldering for hours before it really bursts into flames.
So here's what this all means to you. You can help prevent these kinds of fires by placing the caps back on your 9-volt batteries. You can get some electrical tape and place it right over the terminals of your batteries. Or simply take your battery, place it right back into the original packaging for storage. I'm 5 on your side consumer advocate, Jonathan Walsh.
Firefighters tell us the 9-volt batteries are the focus of concern because of the placement of the terminals side by side and their more common use in typical homes.
We all have junk drawers, odds and ends thrown in, but did you know what's in there could actually start a
tell him
fire?
to stop it.
Tonight, 5 on your side consumer advocate Jonathan Walsh has the bottom line on the potential.
Okay, that's good that it goes on a loop. I didn't know it did that when I downloaded it. That's good. Now, you guys, how many of you had junk drawers, honestly? We all do, just like they said on the news, and you don't mean to. Oh, man. We actually got called out on a call. It was like right around Thanksgiving, and we got called out on a call, and it was a kitchen fire. And you know that shiny foil that you put in the bag? You know how everybody puts the tissue paper, but this is the foily one for Christmas and stuff? Actually, she'd been wrapping presents and stuff and had stuffed them in the bags, and some friends were coming over, so she just shoved it in a drawer. You know how you do, just take it off the counter and put it in there because they're over. Well, what happened is it was a AA battery. We know 9-volt have the terminals on the end, don't we? It was a AA battery. It rolled inside that paper with the shiny foil and made a contact, a connection from one end to the other. Wow, and it took her whole kitchen. You guys, we are just one faulty moment in our minds, stuffing something in a drawer. We're like tucking different things in drawers. What about recalls? How many recalls do we have? Do you guys check recalls? When do we find out about them? Lena's like, when it's on fire, right? Would you agree? You're like, what's wrong with this thing? It's broken. Or it just smokes all of a sudden. Who's heard of microwaves? Who heard of cell phones that they couldn't fly with them because the battery had a problem? Who heard of that? And you didn't stop using your cell phone, did you? Do you know how many stoves, how many microwaves, how many other appliances have that? And we don't stop using it, and I'm not saying don't use it. I love technology because I'm of the age before the microwave. Remember that? Microwaves were so cool for heating leftovers. Now, how would we live without them? But I love technology, but with it comes responsibility. You need to know that it's going to catch fire all by itself, even though you do everything right. It may or it may not, but you weren't in on the construction, were you? And even if we are, how many things just get faulty and a problem happens? When do we want to know about it? That's just like the junk drawer, isn't it? Now, I want to, go ahead. There is. Because even a battery like he was talking about, I don't know if you caught what he did. He took the batteries that were dead out of his smoke detectors, put them in a paper bag, and one battery touched the other because they have a metal casing, and it caused the fire and took his home.
Who would have thought? I mean, a dead battery.
Exactly. You don't. And so with those dead batteries, like he said, with a 9-volt, take a piece of electrical tape or masking tape. I like electrical tape. It's very inexpensive. Put it right over the terminals. You can even put them in a little Tupperware, container. You can get them fairly cheap and dispose of them. You can go to a landfill, but make sure it's sealed, and then I put it in. Yep, but I always make sure I've taped it and put it in a container. Does that make sense? Then that way it won't touch it. Yeah. And so even your dead ones, I know that's the problem. We save them because we don't know where to dispose of them. They all get together, and still they have a little bit of juice in them. Pretty crazy. Now, what are our homes made out of now? They are. But let's think about this, too. Do you remember how heavy TVs used to be? It took like 3 people to lift those things and get them in your house, and they weren't near as big as the screen. Now we can take a big old one and almost pack it ourselves. Why? What are they made out of? Plastic and synthetics, right? The old ones were made out of wood. Our carpets used to be wool, wooden floors, right? Even your wood isn't real wood now. It's pressed together with glue and then has a finish on it, and it's heavier actually. It burns differently. There's 3 different types of smoke, white, gray, and black, and it's not necessarily the color, it's the way it's made up molecularly. Now I'm going to show you a video. I'm going to have him play a video. It's called the UL. Who knows what the UL, Underwriter Laboratories, UL listings? You should look for that on your appliances. It's another stringent thing to say, hey, your appliance works up to our standard, right? And so with this one, this is 2 different houses, and I'm going to have him cue that one up. It's called the Underwriter Laboratory or UL Legacy video. Now, as you guys can see, the one that's the modern room is things that was manufactured 20 to 30 years ago. Or excuse me, the modern one's manufactured now. The legacy one is 20 to 30 years ago. Same things, couches, chairs, carpet, and it started the same way, outlet in your wall just shorted out. Now, can you see a difference in that fire right now? It is. Now, I have people say, oh, I live in a home that's 20, 30, 40, 50 years old. It'll burn like the legacy room. You've updated it. You have new carpet, you have new couches, you have cell phones, you have a lot of other things. And what color is that smoke? Is black smoke good for you to breathe in? And if one room in your house looks like that, you won't make it out. How many minutes do you have to get out the night you have a fire? 2 to 3 from the second the fire starts. Do you think your smoke detectors go off the second the fire starts? They don't. Okay, now I want you to take a little quiz, and we're going to pass these out real quick. You can take one of those. If you'll help me with this, Franz. If you'll pass some of those out, and I'll pass some of these out. Okay. You can each take one. There should be 2 there. You already have your own pen? Do you have a pen? Okay. Now, you guys, I'm going to give you just a minute, and I want you to, I'll read the questions, and I want you to answer them honestly. And do you have a meeting spot outside your home? And I'm going to quantify that for you. Not just you know where the meeting spot is, but everybody in your family, and it's the same spot. Okay, do you have a meeting spot outside your home? Yes or no? Go ahead and circle that. Okay, number 2. Have you ever done a fire drill in the dark? Okay, number 3. Do you replace your smoke alarm batteries in the spring and fall? Both. Now, I'm going to shock you guys here. A lot of people say, I do it when they chirp. You guys, battery backup is not a real thing. It doesn't back up. It actually drains your battery first, and if you have wired-in alarms, it's having that, but as soon as you have a blip in the power, guess what? You don't have an alarm. That's why they chirp when the power goes off, your alarms chirp. You don't have any batteries in them. They've already died. So make sure you change them. That's why they say every 6 months, because that way it's already drained and you don't have anything on reserve. Okay? Do you have fire detection in your attic, garage, kitchen, and laundry room? And I'm going to surprise you. For most of you guys, that's a trick question. By code, you are not supposed to have a smoke detector in any of those places. It's a heat detector. And most people don't know what a heat detector is, and it's not sold in the general public. But it is what's on fire code. There's a big difference between fire code and building code. And you guys are like, what? Building code is the lowest. And you're like, what? Yeah. Building code is the lowest. You can't kill your neighbor, Ross, but you can kill yourself. And so they'll know about the fire in time that your neighbor will make it out with the type of detection that meets code. If you've ever met an electrician, he'll never put in his home what meets code. He does better. Why? It's not good enough. He knows it could cause a fire because it's the cheap stuff. Does that make sense? Code is the bare minimum. They'll know about the fire before it takes the life of your neighbor. It's not about your safety, because code is for public safety. How many of you guys heard of that before? Yeah, because I thought code meant, the best. It's not. It's the lowest you can have. I never thought of that. And so even being an inspector, that really shocked me as I learned more and more about the different codes. I'm like, it is the minimum. It's the minimum requirement. That's what I'm giving you. When I tell you you meet code, it means you meet the minimum. But I never translate that into my safety, did I? And yet I'm an inspector. Crazy. Okay, how long would it take for you to get every... Go ahead, Franz. Nope, just code is the minimum. And then you can choose to do better, but they just have code. Then that's what all the inspectors, like me, for anything, for electricity or anything, it is the minimum requirement you have to make sure for public safety, not necessarily your safety. And when it comes to your home, you're like, wow. And in your churches and in buildings where you guys work, it has to be higher, because where are you guys? Public. So we're actually safer in the public areas than we are in our home. But who would have thought that? I want my home to be the safest. It's my haven. Did you have another question, Franz?
No, I was thinking, if the city code is offered the minimum,
Yep.
why, if they know we're supposed to protect ourselves to only the neighbor, why they don't require more higher standard?
Because government, that it really gets into that. They have the NFPA code, which is the best. The fire code is the best if you look up the NFPA code, and that will have your heat detectors. It's an alarm in every room, so you know the second that you have a fire. But city governments, county governments, state governments get to pick which one you're adhering to because they vote on it. This is our standard for our building code, the minimum that they can put in to be standing. And that's the sad part, because we don't really think about that. You had a question, Lena? You do.
And you have to make sure that the level is up to your own standard. Because obviously the government cannot come and say, well, we're going to raise, because it's you. I don't think they can do that, so it's up to you.
It is. But isn't it sad? We never think of it again. We come back to. We don't. And so, you guys, with that being said, I told you we have 2 to 3 minutes to get out of the home. You only have 2 to 3 minutes to get out from the second the fire starts. And if your alarms or whatever doesn't tell you in time, we have very little. And it's not about the flames, because this is what I thought. Judy, I thought I would be running away from the flames or the smoke. Did you? Nope. Tons of people pass away and die in fires from never even having the smoke come near it. The oxygen gets pulled away from them because we keep our homes so energy efficient now, which is good in one respect, but it pulls all the oxygen away from you, and the fire is in the living room, and it pulls all the oxygen out of your bedroom, and you're gone. So you actually die from lack of oxygen, and if you wake up and try to get out of your fire, your mental capacity as you get less and less oxygen is where you can't function, can you? So if you wake up and you're not going to be thinking the way you are right now. This is optimum. And when we're panicking, we're still not at optimal, are we? And so that's why having a plan and knowing what you need and what you're going to do, you don't fail to the highest point. We fall to the lowest of our training. And if we never train, Ross, sad, right? Go ahead.
I learned from a movie we're training on something I watched. I don't know, I just want to throw it out. Is it true that if there's a fire in your home and you know the oxygen level, like let's say within 3 minutes is that? To drop and crawl, because they say that's where you will find some oxygen.
It used to be true. And you heard me just say used to be. Unfortunately, with all the synthetics, toxic gases are 1.5 to 3 feet off the ground. So now that they're burning, if you get your face clear on the floor, so there's a tunnel as the smoke comes down and the heat comes down. Actually, and crawling takes you more time, and as you get older like me, or my husband has really bad knees, literally bending over, holding your breath, and just getting as fast as you can is most important. Does that make sense? I'm trying not to move, but yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Bend over and go. Okay, now on the back, you guys can see where it says friends and family. Oh, 2 to 5 minutes. Well, you only have 2 to 3. This was for you to decide how much would it take for you to get you, your wife woken up, or your husband, get your kids if your kids are home, your pets. We really don't think about that, do we? And it was for you to kind of guess. I've had people put 15 to 20 minutes. And I'm like, you have to know, this is after your alarm. How long does your alarm take? Do you know what type of alarm you have? So with that being said, that was to give you the thought, like Lena said, I never thought of that. These questions were designed to give you that thought, Judy, that, hey, I may need to improve. And on this side right here, Gary and Ross, I want you to write down the things you think you need to improve upon as I talk, because guess what? If you're like me, I learn it, and then I learn something even better, and I forget what I wanted to remember, right? Do you guys ever have those moments? So write down anything you think you need to improve on that we've been talking about today. And then that way you have a guide to go home and help yourself. Does that make sense? So these are for you guys to take home and make a list of things that maybe you need to improve upon, whether it be an emergency kit, a fire blanket, looking at the hazards, making sure you know what you have. Are you up to code even? That is the minimum. And we're going to talk about a few more things in the time that we have, okay? How many of you guys think you've learned a little bit so far? Great. Now, how many of you guys know what this thing is? It's a smoke detector, isn't it? All of them are not created equal. And so I'm going to show you a little preface before I educate you on this. And this is the ionization alarm video. If you wouldn't mind playing that for me, it says ionization.
There are different types of detectors available. The most common in homes is the ionization detector. Chances are you are one of the millions of families who go to sleep every night with this type of detector in your hallway. It works like this. Ions flow between two metal plates. When smoke particles enter the chamber, the flow is interrupted and the alarm is triggered. If you burn toast in your kitchen and your smoke alarm goes off, you would probably conclude that it would function adequately in any kind of fire. Well, think again. Burning toast and kitchen smoke usually produce lots of small particles, just the right combination to block the flow of ions. But the smoke particles produced by, say, a burning sofa could have a larger charge, are fewer in number, and often don't interrupt the flow of ions. The result? Your alarm might not sound, and you and your family may not be protected.
Okay, so if you guys got that, this is the typical alarm that you can buy anywhere, right? It's an ionization alarm, and it picks up the white smoke. That is that tightly molecules. It was designed to get them. It breaks that ionization field. It's a little piece of radioactive material with two metal plates, causes that stream, it breaks it. Ingenious, right? Well, then we came along with synthetics. Synthetics make that black smoke, and they're fatter in molecule with spaces between them, and they bounce through that ionization field. And they're like mini bombs. You know that black that we saw, that black smoke in that video? At a certain temperature, guess what happens? It's called flashover. Every bit of smoke catches fire. Those little things are like miniature bombs, and they go so there's a double danger, isn't there? And it's horrible for us to breathe in. I want you to imagine, close your eyes and imagine this. You burned the toast. Now, it doesn't smell bad. You can still breathe, right? You're like, oh, it doesn't smell good, but we can still breathe. We're not holding our breath, are we? Now, I want you to keep your eyes closed, and I want you to imagine your couch being on fire. Do you even want to breathe imagining that your couch is on fire? What happens when you breathe something and you open your eyes? With the couch on fire, you don't want to breathe. Burning toast is not a good smell, is it, Franz? But we still, oh man, you burned the toast, you know? But when the couch is on fire, you're holding your breath. It's like tires on fire, or plastics, or synthetics. That's what it is, and it's dangerous for us. Now, these were invented in the late 60s, early 70s. Some of you may not have been around. We didn't have much plastic then. We had the woods, wools, cooking smoke, steam from a shower, and wood burning. That was our main cause. These pick it up very well. Now, they did not become code until late 80s, early 90s. That's why they're in your home. Code is hard to change. Do you know what I mean? Now, there's a lot of difference since then, but when you go into the store, you say, well, why didn't they tell me this? Guess what? Inside the box, you'll find an alarm, right? You can go to Amazon, you can go to Home Depot, you can go to Walmart, you can go to Lowe's. Where would you guys shop if you needed an alarm? Lowe's? And do you know there's only 2 companies that make all the alarms that are in Lowe's? All the alarms that are in Walmart, all the alarms in Ace Hardware, any that you can buy on the market, only 2 companies. And you're like, what? Kitty, First Alert, BRK, FireX, and 2 other brands are all made at the same factory. The inside guts are the same. The outer just is different plastic molds. Some have lights, some don't. Now the reason I'm telling you that is it's like Hunt's tomato sauce. Judy, guess what? Hunt's tomato sauce and Food Club and Western Family are all made at the same plant. Did you know that? They have different labels on them and different grades. Oh my goodness. So inside the box, we go and buy one. We're happy, Ross. We just went to where did you say? Home Depot? Lowe's. Oh, I'm sorry. Competitors. Lowe's. And at Lowe's, they had the alarm, and hopefully inside there, there's going to have the screw and the battery, and then they have this nice piece of paper. What do we do with this piece of paper? We do. Is it packing paper? Why do we throw it away? Ty, you put the battery in, it beeps, you're good, you did it. You don't need to read the rest, right? Do they put this in there because they want to or because they have to? They have to. So I'm going to pass these out really quickly.
So that is something happens so they can
Cover their butts, right? Okay. Now, you guys, we're going to read what they have to tell us. Don't you think that's important? If they have to tell us, we should maybe read it. Okay, so we're going to start at number 1. Do you see where number 1 is and it's highlighted? Okay, read along with me, and I'm going to ask one of you guys a question. Okay, according to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, an agency of the U.S. government, your alarm may not go off or give early enough warning in as many as, what's that number right there, Franz? 35%. Who can see that? It's such tiny print. He has his flashlight on. I had to type it so I could read it because that's too little without my glasses. So it says right there on the front, do you see it, Judy, where it's highlighted? Okay. So it says it may or may not go off in as many as how many? 35%. You guys, when you bought it, how many of you thought it was 100% because it was brand new? Now, they just told you it's 65 or lower that it works right out of the box. Now, Ross, if on the outside of the box it says, I work 65% of the time or less, would you be like, yay, let's put that up? No. Lena, would you be like, what do you got that works 100% of the time? But where does it tell us that, Gary? In the paper that we did what with? Now, the thing is, if you don't replace these every 2 years, now 5 is the longest, the whole thing, and now by law you have to have 10-year non-removable batteries, and that's what we see. They say 10-year non-removable battery, and Ty, we're like, it works how long? 10 years, yes. Depending on, 5 is the longest, and if you don't, where does your failure rate go? Higher. I was scary at 65% or less, Ross. Can you imagine every year that goes by it goes down and down? Who knew? Because it goes off when we're cooking toast. We're like, yeah, for sure the night we have a fire it's going to work. But then here comes that black smoke and it's not designed for it, and does it ever go off and get us out? Who knew? 2 to 5, yep. And the fire industry will tell you, because I'm an inspector, I'll tell you, you got to change them every 10 years for sure. And that's why they thought making it a 10-year battery would make you, but that's still not good enough. I want to do it every 5 if that's when it's, and I didn't know it was not working 100%. I want 100% for 5 years. But where do we find it? In the piece of paper we threw away. Okay, so let's read some other things. Guess what? Go ahead.
The reason why it changes every 2 years is because that anytime when we cook or make smoke, the product, the detector is like again the bad habit of the smell.
Not really. It's just that ionization storm and that steam or whatever. It just breaks those beams. All it has to do is break the beam. It's like, like your flashlight. You know how you break a flashlight beam? Yeah. Same thing, but it's ionization, the things. Now, what creates the ionization storm inside there is a little piece of radioactive material that's deteriorating. And that's why you've got to change it, because that is deteriorating and it's spotty. The little rainstorm is spotty. You would think, but you know what? These go up to clear up to $200, but we don't see them in the store because we shop where? 100 and less. You got to order those. But inside, they work the same. And they're made by the same companies. And it was sad because I'm like, we'll go minimum grade, right, Lena? Because it's got to work better. Does it? And that's what we found out. Now, do you know there's certain places you can't put your smoke detector? What? So let's look. Now, number 2 is on the back, if you see where I put number 2. So kind of flip it over from number 1. There's little bullet points, and you're going to have to open it up. But these are places you cannot put your smoke detector. Don't put them in your kitchen. Don't put them in your garage. Don't put them near your furnace. Don't put them near water heaters. Don't put them near space heaters. Go ahead and open it up, and it's on the inside. Don't put them in airstreams passing by kitchens. Don't put them in damp areas. Don't put them in humid areas. Don't put them in bathrooms with showers. Don't put them in cold areas. Don't put them in hot areas. Don't put them in dusty areas. Don't put them in dirty areas. Don't put them near fresh air vents. Don't put them in drafty areas. Don't put them in dead air spaces. Don't put them in insect-infested areas. And don't put them near fluorescent lights. Now, let me ask you a question. Gary, where can you put your alarm at after that list? Right? And the thing is, you could in your bedroom as long as you don't have a fan. How many of us have a fan? Don't put it in a corner within 12 inches up and down, because that's a dead air pocket. Don't put it if you have dirt. Don't put it if you have dust. Don't put it if you have a draft. Isn't it kind of crazy? It's like, where can I put it? Nope. No. And so with that being said, and those top ones, because Gary got this look on his face, I saw him, when I said kitchen, he was like, what? Yeah, aren't those the top rooms we could have fires? Kitchens, garages, furnaces. And you're like, oh my word, Ross, where can we put these? Now, the sad thing is, they tell you right there, but where did we do with the paper? Threw it away. Now, I'm going to really blow your mind. Ty, they tell you there's fires they don't detect. Would that be good to find out what fires they don't protect? Let's look at number 3. They tell us what fires they don't protect. Do you see it? It's back on the front where we started with 1. Okay, now let's talk about what kind of fires your alarm does not pick up. Your smoke detector has limitations. Whoever wants to hear that with safety equipment? Nobody, okay? So your alarms may not sense every kind of fire every time. So what did you guys buy your alarms to do? Did you buy your alarms to detect some of your fires or all of your fires? All of it. Me too. I thought it was for all of them. Okay, your alarms cannot be expected to sense dangerous fires. That's what I was going to ask you. Aren't all fires dangerous? I want them to do them. Your alarm may not give you early enough warning of fast-growing fires. Have you guys ever seen anything that shows you once a fire's going, it's not slow, it's what? Fast. Okay? They may not give early enough warning of fast-growing fires caused by smoking in bed, violent explosions, escaping gas, poor storage of flammable liquids, overloaded electrical circuits, children's playing with matches or lighters, or persons who set fire on purpose. So let me ask you, what other kind of fires are there? Because they did electrical, they did gas, because that's an explosive stuff. They did people that set them. They did all the fires. So what did that do? That kind of ties our hand on what kind of fires. So let's recap this. Lena, what percent does your alarm fail? 35%. Yeah, 35%. Now, what kind of fires do they detect? Not dangerous ones, right, Franz? I didn't want to know about the campfire. I wanted to know about the dangerous ones. And where can you put them, Judy? Where can you put your smoke detectors? And it kind of feels like nowhere, but we've got to put them somewhere. Maybe in the hallway, as long as it's not dusty, dirty, drafty, and you're like, huh. Yeah, it's like a puzzle. Yeah, you just have to make sure like it's not near a fan, that it's not in a dead air space. Yeah. not too close to the wall, not too close, because that's a dead air space. And so the thing is, though, for code for wiring, they can put them anywhere as long as they're on the room. They actually could put a smoke detector on the wall or on the floor and it would cover code because it just has to be in the room. Yeah, it's crazy. And so I was like, when I was studying for code, I was like, you mean it just has to be in the room? I don't have to tell them where it should be? Nope, it can be anywhere in the room. And that's that. One.
But nobody teach you what you teach us right now, because you say you cannot be in the fan, because you say, well, how these things so high? Everything is high, and the fan is still running there.
Right, and you do need it high because, smoke and heat, just like here in the chapel, it's got to be at that high point. Every bit of smoke and heat, you see your alarm right there, because that's where it's got to be. But you notice it's not right in that little corner. Do you see it? It's right above me. There's one down here, and one down here, and one down here, but there's one right here above me. And that's the best one, but it would have to fill that whole triangle before it moved. And that's why you have multiple ones in here. But they could get away with one, and I could pass them. So your church did better for you by having more. Okay? Now, the very last thing is number 4. Your alarm does not warrant or imply in any way that your smoke detectors will protect your lives and property in the event of fire. Homeowners and renters should be sure to insure their lives and property. What are they saying right there?
You're on your own.
Gary, pretty much. They're like, hey, we're probably not going to work, so get some insurance. But the reality is, Ross, you can replace things. Houses, couches, chairs. You can't replace people or the suffering they go through from a burn. And so it is up to us. You guys, this is what they call working. They spell it out for you. What do you call working? One that goes off every time, in time to get my family out, is mine. Is that yours? So what I call working and what I thought I was getting is no way this. And so what I call working and what they call working, would you agree, is very far apart? It is. And how would we know? Because when do we think about fire safety? We don't. How many of you guys think you learned something? Well, what can we do? Nothing. No, I agree with you. I was totally surprised. So do you guys feel like you learned a little bit? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to show you something because this is a problem that's been happening for over decades. And the fire industry has known about it, and we try to educate people. That's why I switched occupations, Lena, like we were talking about. I was like, man, I knew all this stuff, but I didn't know all this stuff. And I wanted to teach people for free because I had to pay $100 to go learn a lot of it. And I was like, man, as a firefighter, I thought just having a smoke detector was good. And then I found out all these foiabilities, Ross, and I was like, nobody has a chance. And so I want you to watch this. This is called A Problem Decades in the Making. And so if you'll play that one, that will be great. Oh, not that one. A Problem Decade in the Making, number 4. There, he's got it. He's so good.
Home fires are 8 times faster today than in years past. In fact, we may have as little as 2 minutes to escape a fire. To help us understand why, we asked Ray Reynolds, former Iowa State Fire Marshal and current-day fire chief, to help us understand the fire problem.
People absolutely have this misconception. It'll never happen to me. If it does, I can get all my pets and kids out of the home. And that is simply not true. The average person is likely to see 5 fires in their lifetime. So what makes you think it won't happen to you? I wish there was a way that we could accurately portray what fire looks like for the public, because the movies Backdraft and Chicago Fire and these other shows, they don't do it justice. Fire is scary. Buildings collapse, windows break. It's the crackling of the fire, the superheated gas that's down to the floor. Even with the best of fire protection gear that we carry in the fire department, you cannot see your hand in front of your face. I can't tell you how many people I've been to at the scene of a fire where there's been a fatality and the family was just awestruck that they even had a fire, let alone this becoming the worst day for the rest of their life. And the thing that haunts me and still haunts me to this day is there's this outline in the bed that shows exactly how they were laying.
Jim McMullen, the former California State Fire Marshal and current fire commissioner, was one of the experts who remembers the Indiana Dunes test from the 1970s, as well as the test performed in 2004. He sees a problem, decades in the making.
And 3 minutes from the time they had an open flame on the sofa, 3 minutes from a flame that high until we had flashover in the room. 3 minutes, not a lot of time. You have to get out as soon as you have any idea that you have a house fire.
Tim DeDeer, today a Metro Fire Marshal and Deputy Chief, performed research as a graduate student for a leading university in Texas.
The conclusion of the test, we had two types. We had a smoldering ignition fires and we had flaming ignition fires. And the smoldering fires we ignited in the cushion of a chair, and we duplicated this 3 times for the data for 16 total different tests. The ionization smoke alarm that we tested, the probability of failure was 55%. During the flaming ignition fire, the probability of failure was at 19.8%.
It's estimated over 90% of homes have the least reliable and cheapest smoke alarms known as ionization. While this technology meets the minimum standard, tests by the government, universities, fire departments, and even the media continue to expose the failure of these alarms. These are the alarms known for going off when we cook and we wave towels to try and silence them. But surrounded by smoldering smoke, they can remain silent for as long as 30 minutes or longer. 30 priceless minutes when it comes to escaping a fire. It's easy to see why the death rate remains unchanged for decades.
I can tell you countless stories where somebody had to knock on a door and wake people up while the entire attic was engulfed in flames. And I can't tell you how many times I've been on the scene of a fatality where people said, I didn't hear any smoke alarms or I didn't hear anything.
I mean, our house was full of smoke. It was billowing out of all of the windows, and yet our smoke detector never went off.
My house was at the time a 4-year-old brand new home with 7 smoke detectors. They were wired in with battery backup. I knew they all worked. We were very diligent on replacing batteries and things like that for it. And that's when it kind of dawned on me, wow, I never had none of my smoke detectors were going off. In a fire, you don't realize that you lose every picture, every video, everything that I've ever possibly worked for. My little 4-year-old who trusts me with everything, you know, I'm her hero, her daddy's little girl, and yet I couldn't protect my little girl.
The deputy family thought they were prepared when an electrical short inside the wall of their home changed their lives forever.
We'd check our smoke detectors. We kept our smoke detectors tested and batteries in them. I'd come home late from work. Kids were in bed. I came in. It was quiet for the most part. I got settled down. Well, nothing out of the normal. And then I heard a thump that wasn't the right kind of thump. And as a mom, that's all I can tell you. You just know which is right and which isn't. And I sat up and I went, and I sucked in smoke. I hopped up, I ran down the hallway, went through the anteroom at the bottom of the stairs, and went to go up the stairs, but the stairwell was on fire, and my youngest daughter's room doorway was on fire. My husband got up and said, what's the matter? I said, the house is on fire.
911. I have a fire in my home. Are you at 4255 Mazur Station Road? Yes. Okay, you need to get everybody out of this house, okay? Yes. Do you have the phone that you can take with you? Yes. Okay, get everybody out of the house. And do you know what's on fire? The hallway upstairs. I looked at the fuse boxes. It's sparking. Fuse? Okay. Get everybody out, okay? Okay. I'm going to keep you on the line if you've got a mobile, okay? But get out, all right? While I get the fire engine going. It'll take me just a second. I've got the baby I've got to crawl with. You're crawling? With the baby. I've got to crawl with the baby. Leave the phone in, okay? Leave the phone and get out. Okay, bye. Bye.
He ran outside, ran around the front to the front of the house, went up 20 stairs and kicked in the deadbolted front door. Tried 3 times to go in to get the kids out and couldn't do it. The floor was so hot. And as I come out, my husband's standing there. I said, "Where's the kids?" And he goes, takes, I'm sorry, big hand and waves and says, "They're gone." And I turned around, and that's the first time I had to look at the house. And as I turned around and I looked at the house, my youngest girl's room was completely engulfed in flames, and the living room windows exploded. As a parent, your worst nightmare is that you can't protect your children.
As opposed to meeting minimum code, I would recommend everyone provide the optimum protection for yourself and your family.
We had smoke detectors in every room in the house. They either burnt completely up or they melted down the wall. Not once did any of them go off.
I do believe that investing in your own fire prevention plan, it should be your responsibility, and you should own your fire prevention plan and do everything you can to protect your family.
Now, I know that's an emotional video, but that's real people, real things happen. And what was the big thing that stuck out in your mind? I'll give each of you a chance to tell me. Franz, what's the big thing from that you take away? Or what stuck out in your mind? And just make sure you write them down and do it, because it does become where? Out of sight, out of mind. You know it right now, and it seems really pressing, but what will happen by tomorrow? We're busy with our day doing our regular stuff. Ross, was there anything that stuck out in your mind? Yep.
I had to replace, our home is 7 years old. I already had to replace one because it was beeping like crazy. I didn't even know I changed the battery and it was bad.
That's because you were supposed to replace it every 2 to 5, and nobody told us, and you're like, it's just going off. Why, this stupid thing? Yeah, I'm glad you got that, Gary.
It didn't work anyway. So
Exactly.
my question is, before you get a fire detector that works?
That's true. I'm going to show you about them. They're a different kind. And did any of you guys have anything that stuck out in your mind you wanted to share before we go on? What stuck out in your mind, Lena?
I think training and doing a drill with your family, I think would have helped. Because to try and go outside and kick it in, you don't even have time for that.
You don't, do you?
Yeah, they should have, like, not only trained ourselves, but like train our children and our families. What do you do in such, situations?
Exactly. Well, they just didn't know in time, because when she heard that thump, they figured that was the kids falling out of bed trying to get up.
It was already too late.
It was, because they didn't know. She said she had the wired in with the battery backup. They were a brand new home. They were melting down the walls and never went off once during this fire. Judy. Yep. To jump. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a lot of us think too, in that situation, this one thought may help you. You need a ladder. We do. And the thing is, we always say jump out the window. If you turn around and hang from the window, how much further to the ground are you? But we don't think about that. We jump out like this. Turn around and hang and then slide down the building. You might scuff a little, but you won't hit with such force because you're what? Sliding down the building, but we don't think. Oh man, that's too bad. And again, like you said, knowing soon enough. Ty, we didn't ask you, does anything stick out in your mind? It is. Yep, and having that plan and knowing in time is the big thing, isn't it? Because none of them had time, and we never have time. So you asked a good question, Gary. I'm going to quickly tell you this, and there's brownies out there for you. You can ask me questions too. These are called optical technology. Okay, they actually see the smoke. We have the technology now, you guys. They don't need to be hooked to wire. What's the first thing that gets shut off? Electricity in a fire. That's what your breakers will shut off. So if you haven't changed your batteries, now you have nothing. Plus it doesn't detect those smokes. This detects all three types of smoke, white, gray, and black. It literally can see the smoke. Each of them have a computer inside that literally can see the smoke and checks to make sure every system is working correctly. They communicate on a wire frequency, meaning when one goes off, they all go off. Go ahead, Gary. Pardon? They do not. No, you have to get them right from the factory, believe it or not. And yes, a lot of places have to have these now by code that are businesses. The military base has these. Disneyland Hotel has them. The MGM Grand has them. They've had them for a long time. The air bases have had them for over 20 years. I told you I've worked for this company for 20 years. They've already had them, and because they have a lot of money tied up in what? Our soldiers. They're their asset. My family's my asset. These are portable. They go with you. Now, Gary, I'm going to shock you. 20-year battery. Never have to change one. They're enclosed in. They work for 20 years, and you never have to change this battery. Can you have a wired-in version? Absolutely, and it's wired in and batteried with the 20 battery, but you don't have to. So I have a lot of preppers. You know what preppers are? They want to be off the grid. They like these. Now, the nice thing is, too, is these text and email you, and up to 8 people, that you have a fire exactly where it is. It tells you the temperature at all times. It tells you if there's any smoke in it. It'll tell you if it's dirty, because it's optical, right? When you get a piece of dirt in your eye, does it hurt? Yep. But if it's hanging on your ceiling for 10 years, Ross might have a little dirt in it. Not at your house, but no, it does. And so this does all 3 types of smoke, 2 types of heat. Because could you have a fast flaming fire with no smoke? It has heat rise of 15 degrees in 60 seconds and a set temperature of 135. So if it reaches either one of those. So do you see how it's covering you on all fronts? All 3 types of smoke, 2 types of heat, 20-year battery, computer that checks it and tells you whenever you need to do something, and up to 8 people, because if you're out of town, would you want somebody to call the fire department for you? Yep. Or if you're trying to get somebody out, would you want them to come help you? And they know the second you do, because if you're pulling Ty out, you're not going to call 911. You're waiting to get your family out, aren't you? But if your neighbor knew the same time you did, called 911 because they called you, you didn't answer, and ran to your house. That's what we need, isn't it? Okay, and these are made where? United States. Where are all the other ones made? China, Taiwan, and Mexico. They're illegal to make in the United States because of their failure, but we can put them in the United States.
So where do you get those?
Right from the factory. It's OmniShield. We carry them. We'll go over that a little later, but they start anywhere for your house. We won't let you start with 1 because you wouldn't hang off a mountain on 1. You need to start with at least 2, and you can start anywhere. They have $25 payments once you pay for the whole thing. You don't ever have a payment. They, have that monitoring, but it's self-monitoring because they text and email from here. They have carbon monoxide. How many of you know what carbon monoxide? You need those, right? Has carbon monoxide. They have heat detectors. Why? That's what goes in your attics, garages, kitchens, things like that, because you don't want it going off when you cook. Little boy who cries wolf. You want it underneath your house if you have a water heater under there. You want it in your attic if you have a furnace or just all the wiring. These can go up to very high temperatures. We can set them from 175, plus they have the heat rise. So anytime it rises 15 degrees in 60 seconds, it goes off because your house can't do that unless there's an active fire. All of them have 20-year batteries. Pretty cool, right? They also have water sensors and freeze sensors. And for the hearing impaired, they have the 520 hertz square wave. Now, people think hearing impaired means you can't hear very good. That's true. but it's deaf. When you're totally deaf, you can feel this. It's a square wave. We hear in round wave, so it works with us. If anybody's been drinking or on sleep aids, kids under the age of 20 don't wake up to smoke detectors. This automatically interconnects, shakes your bed, it's a bed rumbler, and has the sound. Plus, it's a really cool burglar alarm. Let's say somebody breaks in your house, Judy. You reach over and hit that button, all the alarms go off. Do you think it would scare them? Franz, you got to hear how loud they were. Do you think it would scare them? Yeah. It would, wouldn't it? So there is stuff out there. We do educate about the different types of alarms, you guys. There's a lot of other things we can teach you. Buy the brownies that I have out in the foyer. I made you some really good brownies. There's a sign-up sheet that if you'd like to have a class that's personalized in your home, we come and teach you about fire safety, things that pertain to you, and any other equipment that I haven't gone over with you guys can ask us about. We're gonna give you one of these 180-piece emergency kits that have flashlights, radios, ponchos, blankets, just for taking the time to learn. So if you wanna take advantage of that, it just asks for your name and number. We'll call and set up a time that's good for you. If not, I wanna thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to come today. And I hope you've learned a lot about fire safety, and write your lists, take it home and use it. Do those things you need to do. We're always available for questions. I have some cards that I know the church has them as well, but I want to thank you guys for letting me come out. Now I'm going to open it up for any questions. You guys have any questions? Well, thank you. Any questions? All right, well, thanks for letting me come today.